Thank you, Louise. Our next speaker is Paddy Kelly, Director of the Children's Law Centre in Northern Ireland.
Thanks, Fergal. Can I thank Rock for the opportunity to say a few words today. I am conscious of my 5-minute limit and conscious of the fact that Fergal's just over here and he'd shout at me. So this was going to be very much a whistle-stop tour through some of the highlights and unfortunately a greater number of lowlights of where we are in Northern Ireland 15 months after the UN Committee gifted us their thoughtful concluding observations and recommendations. Before I go into that, I want to pay a personal tribute to Dragon, who I have had the pleasure of working with over many years in terms of realising the potential of the UNCRC to improve the lives of the children in the 4 jurisdictions of the UK. I've learned an awful lot from him and he shared generously of his knowledge and his contacts and his wisdom, and sadly for us, but not for him, Dragon is retiring on Friday. So I want to just say on a personal level, thank you so much for everything you've taught me. I also want to pay tribute to the amazing young people who informed the 2023 recommendations. They were powerful, passionate, fearless in speaking truth to power and in holding duty bearers to account despite personal cost. They spoke with authority that comes from lived experience and shared selflessly of that experience. I believe the strength of the concluding observations speaks to their impact of their witness in Geneva, so I want to publicly recognise and thank them. So where are we in our jurisdiction in respect of implementation? Our executive was restored in February of this year, and while we still live with the legacy of the hiatus of government, the impact of Brexit, the post-COVID legacy for children, and critically the budget deficit, we would have hoped to have seen more positive developments in relation to implementation by this stage. Despite the efforts of Paul and those in the Children and Young People Strategic Team in our Department of Education, children are not a focus for our restored executive, as evidenced by our first draft programme for government in 8 years, which was issued for consultation last week. The programme for government is light on detail, has no specific outcomes focusing on children and young people, and no outcome focusing on child poverty, despite the fact that 24% of our children are living in poverty in Northern Ireland. Our executive will, within the next few months, go out to consult on the 25-26 budget. Drawing strongly on the committee's recommendation, the Children's Law Centre judicially reviewed the Northern Ireland 23-24 budget. That case is still before the courts, but we hope the committee's recommendation and our legal challenge to previous failures will focus the executive on the committee's recommendation to human rights proof, equality proof and children's rights proof, the forthcoming budget, and mitigate any adverse impact on children's rights. The committee's recommendation spoke about the impact of Brexit on the enjoyment of children's rights, and I'm conscious of Aaron here, who did a lot to raise children's concerns when Brexit was going through. The negative impact of Brexit on children's rights continues to cast its shadow. Our legal team have evidence that there's a number of children who require elective surgery in Northern Ireland. The capacity to provide for these services doesn't exist within the jurisdiction, but is available in the south of Ireland. Prior to Brexit, these children would have been able to access the services they require in the south, but as a consequence of Brexit, as Aaron and others foresaw, this is not currently possible. The committee's recommendations spoke at length about policing and the use of force. For the last 30 years, the UN have been calling for the end of the use of plastic bullets, which are lethal weapons, on children and young people. The recommendation, which is also reflected in our peace process, was renewed again last year by the committee. In the last financial year, plastic bullets have been fired in the north of Ireland more than twice as often in the previous year. In 23-24, they were twice drawn and pointed at a child 13 to 17, and they were fired most recently in July this year in circumstances where children were present. In Northern Ireland, we have reached an all-time high on the use of spit and bite hoods. They were applied at least 13 times on children, including at least once on a child aged 12 or under. According to data at the end of June this year, the overuse of stop and search in children continues. There were 2,089 stop and searches involving children in the last reporting year, including 56 children aged 12 or under. Of those children, only 74 were subsequently arrested, a 3.7% outcome rate. On an optimistic note, our executive, our Department of Justice introduced today a justice bill which presents an opportunity to raise the minimum age of criminal responsibility. We are, however, worried that the age will not be in compliance with the UNCRC recommendations, and it is hoped our executive might learn from colleagues in Scotland who regret the missed opportunity to raise to at least 14 and hopefully 16. I still find it hard to believe that in 2024 in Northern Ireland it is still legal to assault our most vulnerable citizens. The new Justice Bill, which was introduced today, also presents an opportunity to remove the defence of reasonable chastisement and provide children in Northern Ireland with equal protection from assault. CLC recently consulted with asylum seekers living in contingency hotels. Evidence that they give us indicates that things have not improved significantly for those children since the committee's recommendation. Indeed, the recent impact of the horrendous racist riots in Belfast have exposed duty bearers' failure to prioritise the best interests of children and to properly safeguard them. 4,105 of our most vulnerable children are in the care of the state, who spend $265,000 a year per child keeping children in residential homes. Against that backdrop, it is an appalling indictment of our social care system that in the last 12 months the police were called 5,407 times to children's homes, secure care and mental health hospitals. Post-COVID, we are witnessing an increased demand for mental health services for children, despite the committee's repeated recommendations over a number of examinations, and despite children and young people constituting 25% of the population in the north of Ireland, the total spend on CAMHS has consistently been less than 10% of the overall mental health budget. Given this brief dip into the Northern Ireland Executive's disappointing report card in delivering the committee's recommendations, what is the solution? Drawing on the Children's Law Centre's legal work and its extensive work over 27 years on policy and advocacy, it will be the Children's Law Centre's view that the most effective way to vindicate the rights of all children living in Northern Ireland is for the UNCRC to be fully incorporated and fully justiciable in our domestic courts. A Bill of Rights for Northern Ireland, provided for in our 1998 peace agreement, provides us with the vehicle to secure this legislative framework. The requirement that the Bill of Rights is legislated for in Westminster may help to circumvent some of the challenges that Jules has highlighted and which have been faced by colleagues in Scotland when trying to ensure the benefits of incorporation are enjoyed by all children in all circumstances. As the Children's Law Centre continues to work with other human rights NGOs to deliver a Bill of Rights for Northern Ireland, we would very much welcome the Scottish Government and Scottish colleagues sharing their experience of incorporation, including the challenges with the Northern Ireland Executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Paddy. I'd now like to invite Sean O'Leary.